Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's get started and look into the first article. First article says Hong Kong suspends extradition bill. Before we understand the present context, let's go back to history. Let's understand one of the concepts of world history, and that is to do with the Opium War. Why are we discussing this? That is because it is during this period that Hong Kong was given to the Britain. So let's understand the entire background and then step into the present context. First, let's understand the first Opium War that lasted between 1839 to 1842. 19th century, Britain had an appetite for the Chinese tea, but the Qing dynasty that was ruling back then in China and its subjects did not want to buy anything from the British produced, and they demanded the British pay for the Chinese tea using their silver as well as the gold. So what was the objective here? The Chinese will be exporting the tea. They will not be importing anything from the Britain, whether it is British manufactured or the British produced, but instead the British Empire will have to pay back the Chinese using the silver and the gold. The government of Queen Victoria back then did not want to use up its silver as well as gold. They were having major imports from China. These imports from China in the form of tea was also a major taxation bid in British. So this taxation that was imposed on tea back in home was also a major source of economy. So Victoria's government decided to forcibly export opium from the British colonized Indian subcontinent to China. Why? Because they did not want to give away their silver and gold, so they wanted another product in replacement for tea. So they chose opium to be exported from India, which was colonized by British back then, to China. So this opium would be exchanged for tea. So the Chinese government objected to this large-scale importation of narcotics into their country. At this particular time, the British started negotiating with China. So what they said was that opium is a medicine, but China, however, was experiencing the negative effects of opium. There were military forces which were suffering directly because of the impact due to its addictions. So what the British said to the Chinese was this can be used as medicine. But what the Chinese military did, they started using it in a negative way, and this became a source of addiction. When this particular process happened over a period of time, the Chinese immediately banned the opium that was exported from India to China. But this export was not completely stopped. Why? Because there was smuggling that started by the British Empire to China. This continued for over a period of time, and ultimately what the Chinese government did, the Chinese and the Qing government took over direct action. What was the direct action? They captured all these important opium bales. After capture of these opium, they immediately destroyed them immediately. This provoked the British Empire. So what did the British do? The first Opium War. This was the first war between Britain and China back then, and this lasted from 1839 to 1842. So Britain invaded the Chinese mainland and occupied the highland of Hong Kong on January 25th, 1841, using its strong military that was prevalent in India back then. So China lost the war and had to cede Hong Kong to the Britain in the Treaty of Nanking. So this is for the first time Hong Kong became a crown colony of the British Empire. The Treaty of Nanking that was signed after the First Opium War was not able to resolve this particular dispute of opium trade, and the conflict further escalated, and this resulted in what is called as the Second Opium War. The settlement of this particular conflict was First Convention of Peking that happened in the year 1860, when Britain acquired the southern part of the Kowloon Peninsula as well as the Stoneculters Island. Immediately after this particular acquisition by the British, it was further extended, where Britain obtained a 99-year lease of new territories in the year 1898. So a 99-year lease means that Britain would be able to keep up Hong Kong until 1997. So in the year 1997, what happens? Britain had to transfer this particular territory of Hong Kong back to China. So this is the brief background. So as this particular transfer happened from Britain Empire to China, there was a special administrative region. So this special administration region was guaranteed to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong here maintains separate governing and economic systems from that of mainland China and its people, simply because majority of these people believe they are more Hong Kongers than the Chinese. So what is the background here? So the background here is the administrative setup of Hong Kong is totally different from that of the Chinese mainland. So when Hong Kong was handed over to China in the year 1997, after this lease agreement ended by Britain, both these sides, that is Hong Kong as well as Chinese, agreed that the city would remain a semi-autonomous region where they would have certain basic law. They will have their own mini constitution that will be prevalent for the next 50 years. So the Britain transferred Hong Kong back to the China. So there was an agreement that they entered that there will be a basic law, there will be a mini constitution, and this mini constitution will continue to be enforced for about 50 years. So this basic law provides people in Hong Kong more political freedom than their counterparts in mainland China. When we know the mainland China, it is politically having a single communist party which will control its entire political system. But when it comes to Hong Kong, they'll have more political freedom than that is prevalent in China. There is also a relatively free press in Hong Kong than that is seen in China. Then there is unregulated internet and less controlled judiciary in Hong Kong, which means that Hong Kong is more liberal, the judiciary is more pronounced, and due process is formulated and is present than which is seen in mainland China. So mainland authorities are not able to involve or operate directly in the state of Hong Kong. But this is not all. Every now and then, Chinese try to meddle with Hong Kong. Why? Because they are not directly under the control of the Chinese mainland. That is why the Chinese Political Bureau tries to meddle every now and then. But this is not taken up easily by the Hong Kong. So there have been n number of protests in the past. So Hong Kong has several protests since it was handed over to China by the British colonists in 1997. In the year 2003, there was an attempt made by the Chief Executive Tung Chi, who made an attempt to pass stringent security legislation. Why? Because this was pushed by Beijing. This was pushed by mainland China. But this was successfully resisted by tens of thousands of protesters. Again, in the year 2014, the city saw long protests against the proposed changes in the electoral system. They wanted to bring changes with respect to how elections happen in Hong Kong. This was again resisted, and this also came to be known as the Umbrella Revolution, or what is called as Umbrella Movement. So this was the protest that happened previously when it comes to Hong Kong fighting against the imposition of the mainland China. But now let's focus on the current bill. So what happens in the current bill is, we also discussed that they have a semi-autonomous constitution and a judiciary. So the judiciary present in Hong Kong is different from the criminal justice system that is prevalent in mainland China. So what this extradition bill basically does is, Hong Kong as a state has some extradition with other countries as well as states. So those people who have certain penalties, who have committed heinous crimes, will be falling under the judiciary of Hong Kong. But what this extradition bill currently does is, in case of a person getting caught due to some process, some crime that he has committed, he will be extradited to the mainland China. So he'll be coming under a different criminal justice system. So these laws that are present in judiciary of the Hong Kong will not be prevalent, but those laws that are present in mainland China will be imposed on this particular person. So what Hong Kong and its people believe is that all these suspected criminals will not be from now on following the criminal justice system that is prevalent in Hong Kong, but this will be from the criminal justice system and the judiciary that is prevalent in the mainland China. So this extradition plan applies to about 37 crimes, including murder, sexual offences, abduction, peddling of drugs, corruption, and this will also have retrospective effect. So even if this particular crime is committed in the past, this law will also ensure that such criminal will be facing the penalizing provisions of that which is prevalent in mainland China and not which is prevalent in Hong Kong. So this Hong Kong bill that was supposed to be implemented is currently being protested, and that is why the Hong Kong administration, the local officials have planned to retreat it, and they're planning to stop this particular bill from being executed. So what are the other concerns that people are focusing when it comes to this particular issue? What they sense is that Beijing has been trying to impose its rule in Hong Kong. Why? Because in case there are any individuals who are going to criticize China, such people are abducted from Hong Kong. There is growing authoritarian tendencies with respect to the leadership in Hong Kong. Why? Because these people are funded by China. Then there are lawmakers who are disqualified, activists banned from running for their office, and political parties prohibited, all due to the pressure tactics from the mainland China. So in order to avoid all this from happening, all these people came up together. They started protesting against this particular move. So this particular move and protest has made sure that local officials have suspended this extradition bill. So this is what we need to know in reference to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article is speaking about why does Assam need more foreigner tribunals. Let's look into this particular article in great detail. The foreign tribunals are unique to Assam, are in the news as the final list of the National Register of Citizens is to be published this July 31st. So once the NRC is published and the report is present, what this particular NRC will do is it will segregate people. What is the segregation? One are people that are part of India. The other are the illegal immigrants who happen to enter Assam from Bangladesh after March 25, 1971. So what happens is you have one set of people who are citizens of India. There are other set of people who will be called the illegal immigrants who came from Bangladesh. But there is another concern. In this second list, who are called as illegal immigrants, there will be few people who would also be genuine citizens of India. They need a process, they need a platform where they can voice their opinion and put out their grievances. So what is that? It is this particular platform, that is the tribunal, which will listen to the voice of those people who are genuinely citizens of India but are currently clubbed under illegal migrants. So what is this tribunal all about? So this tribunal is one of those platforms where genuine citizens who are currently clubbed with the illegal immigrants, and their voices will be heard under a particular platform called as the administrative tribunals. Now the question is, who runs this particular tribunal? Each tribunal is like a quasi-judicial setup. This is headed by a member who is appointed under the Foreigners Tribunal Act of 1941 and the Foreigners Tribunal Order of 1984 as the guidelines issued by the government from time to time. According to it, there are three types of people who can head this particular tribunal. A member can be a retired judicial officer of the Assam Judicial Service, or he can be a retired civil servant not below the rank of secretary and additional secretary with some judicial experience, or he can also be a practicing advocate not below the age of 35 years with at least 7 years of practice. According to this, there is another important clause that all these members who will be heading this particular tribunal are also required to have fair knowledge of official languages of Assam. Now let's go back to history. Let's look at 2005 judgment, which is a landmark judgment by the Supreme Court. When you look at the history books, cases of all those suspected foreigners were usually handled by this particular act called as Illegal Migrants and Tribunals, which was present under the IMDT Act. This particular IMDT Act, or the Illegal Migrants Tribunals Act, was passed by the Indira Gandhi government in the year 1983. So what was this act all about? So all those people who were entering India illegally to the state of Assam were coming under this particular act, and in case they were identified, they used to be pushed under this particular act to check whether they were citizens of Bangladesh or they were citizens of India. But this particular system had some key lacunae. So what are it? Let's say, for example, the IMDT Act was only applicable to the state of Assam, but for any other foreigner or illegal migrant, what we had was the Foreigners Act of 1946. So what the Supreme Court said is, why is this happening in the state of Assam? So the Supreme Court said, while the entire India had Foreigners Act of 1946, why is that Assam has specifically the IMDT Act? So this stands nullified. Why? Because there is a different set of law for the entire India. So Assam cannot have a different law is what the Supreme Court came up with. Another key important issue with respect to the IMDT Act is with respect to the accuser, accused and police. What happens in this particular position is, let's say I am a person who is staying in Assam. So I am an accuser who is saying that there is a person who is my neighbor who is the accused and he is the illegal immigrant. So I am the accuser. So I'm accusing another person who is accused, and I'm also telling the police that this neighbor of mine is an accused and he happens to be the illegal immigrant. Now, if I go back to the tribunal or if I'm filing a particular case, the onus is on me to prove that this particular person is an illegal immigrant. But this is not the same in the Foreigners Act. Why? Because in the Foreigners Act, it is the accused who has to prove that he is the citizen of India. But with respect to the IMDT Act, it is the accused, that is me, who has to prove that this is a person who is an illegal immigrant. It is the police who have to prove that the accused is an illegal immigrant. But when it comes to the Foreigners Act, it is the accused, that is the illegal immigrant, has to justify this particular stand that he is genuinely the citizen of India. Looking at all these dimensions, the Supreme Court came up with a particular judgment and it said that this particular IMDT Act will stand nullified and this will become illegal, not in line with the Foreigners Act. That is why the Supreme Court also declared that this particular IMDT Act also stands nullified. Now the present question is, how do the tribunals work? For this particular question, what we need to understand is there is something called as the Assam Police Border Organization. This is a wing of the state police. They are tasked with detecting all these foreigners. They'll have to ensure they pick up cases for the tribunals to decide whether that particular person is a foreigner or not. So the government appoints these border police. They'll have a monthly target and these people will have to look for these people within the state of Assam, and in case they figure out that this is an illegal immigrant, they'll immediately put this case right in front of the tribunals, and it is the tribunals which will decide further whether this particular person is an illegal immigrant or not. So this is how it is currently functioning in the state of Assam. But why are we discussing this? That is because recently the central government also came up with a notification that all state governments and union territories under the administrative powers given to the district magistrate, they will also be able to establish the tribunals. Earlier, these tribunals were established only by the central government, but now the state government as well as the union territories would be able to establish this particular tribunal. We have discussed this in our earlier tribunals, so go back and watch this particular discussion. This is all we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, want to make India a $5 trillion economy by 2024, says the Prime Minister. What is this article all about? This article currently is speaking about the 5th Governing Council meeting between the Prime Minister of India as well as the state chief ministers as well as the lieutenant governors. So what happens in this particular meeting is Prime Minister Narendra Modi stresses on the growth of the Indian economy. So he makes a genuine request to all states. What does he say? He says that each state will have to ensure that they are doubling their economy. Let's say they are currently focusing at 5% of their economy. This has to be increased to 10. Or in case they are currently at 4%, this has to be increased to about 8%. So in case there are all these states that comprise India, if they are able to double their economy, India would be able to progress and India will also be able to establish this genuine growth over a period of time. So what he asks all the state governments to do is, he wants them to focus on their core areas. So what are their core areas? Every state will have its core competence. Let's take some of the example. Karnataka and Bangalore especially is known for its IT. So focus on this core sector. Let's take the example of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu with its Chennai as well as Coimbatore is a manufacturing hub. So focus on the manufacturing hub. Maharashtra with Bombay in focus is focusing on core industrialization. So all the state governments will have to identify what their core competency is. So identify this core competency, and after identifying this core competency, start recognizing it, start increasing the economy, double the economy, and start working towards raising the GDP targets from the district level, from the very core level, so that in case the state is able to present this, what we will also be able to establish is the greater prospect of India developing. So what the Prime Minister has also said is that there have been number of structural reforms that the state government will have to bring up. So what we will also do is we will cooperate with the state governments. Let's bring up few reforms in the farm sector. Let's also revise the disaster relief funds. So all this will also be structured so that we as an India can prosper, and development as a prospect is ensured for the future generation. This is what the present core context of this article is. In case there are more updates in the future, we will surely have the discussion with respect to this issue. Now let's look into the next article. This article says, as smoke billows from city fields, government misses the fire. This is speaking about stubble burning, its impact to the environment as well as the health. This article has been explained in detail on October 1st, 2018 under the second topic, stubble burning issue and solutions at 4 minutes 10 seconds. An elaborate explanation of all this that is present in this article has already been explained, so kindly look into this particular article. But when it comes to the present context, what this article currently focuses on is two important facts. So what are these? 14 of the world's 20 most polluted cities are in India, with Delhi ranking 6th. Kindly remember this fact. In 2017, 1.24 million people died in India due to air pollution, according to a study that was funded by the government. This stubble burning produces what is called as particulate matter, which can lead to heart attacks, worsen bronchial asthma, as well as other respiratory diseases. So this is the factual data that is given in this article, but with respect to other set of information, what this stubble burning is, what this happy cedar is, what are the various issues, why farmers continue with this stubble burning, what is the administrative lacunae, has all been explained in this topic. So kindly get back and watch this particular video. Now let's look into the next article. This article says Maldives should not try balancing ties with India and China. This is the opinion of former president, that is Mohammad Nasheed. India and China both have good relationship with Maldives, but this has to be seen differently, is what Mohammad Nasheed is cautioning the government. Why? Because India has been a good partner for Maldives. We have a good relationship with India. But when it comes to China, China has what is called a debt trap diplomacy. Let's focus on the Latin American countries. Let's focus on the poor countries of Africa. And recently, as we have also seen in Sri Lanka as well, because of huge investments and money that China have, what do? They invest or give money to that particular home country, and when this particular home country is not able to repay back the debt, what they do is they take over the local administration, which means the sovereignty of that particular country is compromised. So what the Maldivian ex-president says is that because of this particular threat to sovereignty, they'll have to be very careful with respect to their cooperation with China, and they cannot afford to have any defense cooperation, because the Chinese government are like the pests, and the minute they enter a particular country, they completely ensure that that particular region is completely dismantled, and this will be a threat to the sovereignty. This should not be supported, and as a result, Nasheed says that both these relationship is totally different, and we will have to be cautious about the Chinese relationship. Now let's focus on some of the prelims practice questions. Consider the following statements regarding autonomous and accommodating transactions in balance of payments. Autonomous items in BOP take place due to some economic motives like earning income and profit maximization. Accommodating items in BOP refers to transactions that takes place to cover deficit or surplus arising from autonomous transactions. Select the correct answer using the code given below. What is the correct answer? The answer to this is both, because both these statements that are given are right. Now let's look into the next practice question. J curve in the economics is related to, this is related to the trend of country's trade balance following a devaluation. Let's look into the map based question. Arrange the following from west to east: Dispur, Gangtok, Impal and Itanagar. The answer to this is 2143. First you have Gangtok, then Dispur, Itanagar as well as Impal. Now let's look into the next practice question. The FAO accords status of globally important agricultural heritage system to traditional agricultural system. What is the overall goal of this initiative? The answer to this is 2 only. Why? Because this does not focus on modern technology. So the first option is rooted out, and it also provides geographical indication. The FAO does not do anything of that sort. So 1 and 3 is out. So the answer to this is 2 only. Now let's look into the mains practice question. The Opium Wars opened the gates for sphere of influence for the Britain in China. Explain the statement in reference to Hong Kong. So please write all your answers on the comment section so that you guys can have a peer review amongst yourself. And also that I see in the comment section is less and less of answers that is being answered, which is very bad. So please ensure that you're writing in as many as possible so that you guys can have an improvement over your answer writing. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.